Hello, I'm Chris Athanas. I'm a KMP developer. I was getting out of the way. I want to show you that. Tech support said they're coming out for that on Tuesday. We'll see. I'm going to be reacting to a couple of videos today that are going more into the adventure-driven development and so the mindset and attitude and some of the opportunities that are available because of how prevalent some of these issues are with corporate environments and like mostly large corporate environments that don't have this culture already or haven't had this culture from the start, or the original management's gone. It, it, there's just a major opportunity available because of what it's been like.
Last two jobs that I worked, the number one reason people lost their job was because of attendance. So much of this is actually within our grasp. People showing up late, people not showing up at all. So I had just previously had this idea that, well, the poor stay poor and the rich get rich in society, and there's not much you can do. You could, have a revolution and change the system, but other than that, your hands are just tied. The fact that I thought that was just so unproductive for so long that I think these messages are so vitally important.
Well, sorry, just to interrupt this.
Yeah, so that's what I'm kind of pointing out. Is like a lot of people are feeling like if they've been in software development, they've gone through their tutorials and their personal projects and their senior and lead roles, right? Then they get jumped like first thing that's available. It's a tunnel of fake agile doom, and they'll say, "Oh, they say it's agile. They got all the accoutrement, but it's not that." So people go, "Is this what software development is?" Because when I first started with the tutorials and personal projects, it was pretty cool, pretty fun. It was actually interesting, and when I was learning all these things in here and like get a little bit more skilled here, and then I get into a tunnel of fake agile doom. It's like, ugh. It feels like, and then they go, oh, then I'll try and do my own things. The tar pit, a seemingly good idea. It's like, I'm not getting anywhere. And then so that's people think that's not software development. It's not. That's just the most common style because this stuff's not taught. Is we've been inherited a bunch of industrial processes and people just don't know how to adapt to knowledge work, which is what adventure driven development, which is true software, actually new software development is knowledge work, and it's not a cookie cutter process. You can't do time estimates on it. It's not that kind of thing. If we did the same thing we did, even though we are typing code, but if we did the exact same code that we did last week, I can tell you how long that'll take again. It'll probably take less than time than I did than the previous did the exact same thing again. But that's not really what we're doing in software development. We're doing knowledge work, right?
Just for a second, because people don't understand.
Previously had this idea.
Oh, shit, hold on.
That will change this. That
people don't understand how radical resentment of work is and resentment of bosses is. So,
yeah,
how is it that I was able to succeed in the software field even though mega corporations were doing the same thing?
So I don't know what you care about. Stefan Molyneux, he's been canceled. And everybody, he's got he's libertarian and he's got it's kind of strange in a lot of ways. But what he's talking about here doesn't matter about anything else that he talks about. The thing he's talking about right here, you can take this as a takeaway, no matter what you think about Stefan.
Well, because I was broke. And I know this sounds kind of odd, but there's this constant churn in society. So many people, when they get money, they just increase their spend, right? It used to drive me crazy with people that I worked with. They'd get their hands on some cash and they just immediately buy more stuff. And I'm like,
well, I mean, that's supposed to be happiness, right? We get that jolt, right? When we do the purchase of the Amazon box shows up, and we're like, oh, we get that jolt of dopamine. And in our culture, currently, it's not been. There's like that's all you get, right? You get to go to work. You're given a ticket. You do the drum march 2-week sprint, and at the end of that, you get your paycheck. And okay, so now what do I get to do? I gotta turn it into some pleasure here because this sucks. This sucks down here. All this stuff down dungeon grind, Jira burn death. All this is standard big tech corporate environments. Everyone's like, I'm gonna elite code grind and get into Google. Oh, you're gonna be doing one of these. You'd be like hating life, like my life sucks, but at least I got free lunch.
No, freedom is a buffer. You got to have some savings. Otherwise, you don't really have anything to negotiate from because you've got to eat what you kill in the moment. There's no storage, right? So when you have a bunch of rich people, they can't compete with the talented poor. Because when I first started my software company, my rent was $275 a month. I mean, I was living in one room in a house with 5 other people in a pretty rough section of town next to an abattoir. I mean, I had no car. I've never been a big one for clothing or sort of ostentatious spending or something. So I could live on less. And when you can live on less, you can sell your product for less. If you've got to pay someone $150,000, then you have to pass that cost along to the customer. So poor people are a constant threat to the wealthy because the wealthy get comfortable, they get complacent, they get lazy, and there is a churn in a free market.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Is like these elite don't stay on top. These big companies don't stay on top. At one point, they dominated. Like IBM dominated the planet. Now they're 10th place, 25th place, whatever. They're not. They're a 2-bit player because these things just churn. That's the way it goes.
As the wealthy have particular talents, their kids are unlikely to inherit all of those talents. Like the kid of a great singer is probably going to be a better singer than average, but not as great as the great singer. It's just a regression to the mean, it's called, right? So rich people who become wealthy, they want to hang on to that privilege.
Yeah.
And in a free market, the best way to hang on to that privilege is to make poor people resent working, resent bosses, feel exploited, because resentful workers are not very productive. They don't like coming into work. They don't want to understand the business. They dislike their boss. They're obstructive. They're difficult. They spread negative rumors. They don't do they're not focusing on productivity. They just kind of hate being there. So this propaganda, and it's a kind of funny thing that the people who are doing well in a relative free market have a huge incentive to sow the seeds of resentment among the poor. And I saw this because I grew up in a very, very poor environment.
Sure. So I grew up lower in the middle class. So yeah, I saw the same kind of stuff. Most of the people I was around, they had this attitude. And I was lucky that I got somehow something else came inside me that like made me want to see the world differently. I started working when I was really young. And maybe that has a lot to do with manual labor. I was doing manual labor, like picking peas and cleaning up yards and all that kind of junk. A lot. I mean, and so if I wanted something, I had to go do that stuff to go get it. So it wasn't just handed to me. So maybe that's part of it. And also I realized like there's the other things I can do. There's different levels of fungibility. Like I've worked at dog kennel for a while. I've done wash dishes. I've worked at a computer store selling shareware discs for $1 a piece. There's different levels of work and how you feel in those things. So I got those really early on. I don't think maybe people just don't get a lot of those experiences. I think they go to college and after college, your work life's going to be like it was then. Or like it's just everything's at the game and it's silly and stupid and it doesn't matter. And you just show up and you get a B or an A.
Like welfare, really the bottom and dregs of society. And you could see this resentment was just being sown all the time.
Yeah.
You're just being exploited, man. The boss makes 10 times what you make, but you're the one who actually produces the goods, right? There's a line from an old Police song, which is, I work all day in the factory, making a machine, but not for me. It must be a reason that I can't see, right? And this idea that you're the ones doing the real work, man. The bosses are just parasites, and then you don't like the bosses, you don't learn, you don't get mentored by the bosses, and it's a way for the wealthy people to stay wealthy, is just sow all of these seeds of resentment among the poor because they know the poor can radically outwork and outcompete them because the poor are hungry and lean as hell. And that is a thing that, the mammals overtake the dinosaurs as a constant churn in the free market. But if you can convince all the poor people who have low overhead and a huge work ethic that they're just being exploited and they should resent their bosses and hate going to work and it's all terrible and so on, man, you're crippling a lot of people who would.
So that's kind of where they want to keep you, these dungeon grinds, where I'm at a really good tech company, big tech company. They'll be here for us. Job security for life. It's like, no, that's not quite it. So he's enhancing this particular facet of work life. No one is going to tell you at work, like, hey, no one's going to tell you that when you're actually doing all the things that they want you to do. It's like, hey, did you know that you could probably go out and do this for somebody else, and instead of having to pay for all the upper management, you can just take that money and pay yourself or somebody else too. Did you know that? Do you know you could do that? There's nobody going to say that at work. Or you're gonna get that from your 12 years of indoctrination at your public school system? Oh, they're going to tell you? They don't know. First of all, they don't know, and then second of all, that's not what they're there for. If it wasn't news to you, it's not public school education. It's public indoctrination. So your parents can go work at 2 jobs. It's a babysitting operation because at the end of that 12 years, you should have some skills. You don't think that you could go spend a year someplace and somebody can show you like how to build a house or how to make a garden or how to do financial stuff? No, none of that. After 12 years. After 12, and I was working when I was like in 6th grade, 7th grade. I was already working. I was already understanding how this economic system set up. So I kind of had this like other thing that was going on. I thought everyone else was having the same experience too, but obviously not. So yeah.
The mobile phone was kind of predicted and fantasized about to a degree.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about Rory. about this very old video where he talks about how the next revolution is not going to be technological. We've actually come up to a barrier right now, unless we have some sort of major breakthrough in tech somehow, some way, and not just blockchain. When I say tech, like a base layer technology, people throw away this like technology, like database software libraries. That's not technology, okay? Crypto is not a technology. AI is not a crypto technology. It's built on a technology, right? It's techniques. It's software techniques, okay? There's all kinds of ways of doing software techniques, all kinds of ways. And that's not a tech. I don't consider that technology. I consider the base layer, some enabling base physical. It has to be physical too. That enables something else, like another that enables the software to be written, some sort of hologram or something. Quantum computing is sort of there, but from what I've seen of it and the hype around it, and we're going in other dimensions. No, you're not. You're not going in other dimensions. I don't know. You might want to say that mathematically, but then you kind of mix it in with the sci-fi stuff. And those guys like the D-Wave people saying, "Oh, we're in other dimensions." It's like, no. And the kinds of computing is not general computing. It's this very niche thing that may or may not actually do what it says it does, and it may actually not be possible, right? So what I'm talking about is a level of technology like that. That's what that you can ride up the low-hanging fruit from that, right? But we're not there now. We're kind of at this sigmoid where we're kind of peaking out with the actual technology, the base layer stuff. So now it's more psychological, right? There's a bunch of low-hanging fruit, and people would pay for instead of hitting their head with a brick, they'd rather hit it with a soft shoe. And this is like you're hitting your head now still with a soft shoe, but actually we'd actually not like to be hitting our head with anything. We'd like to be like soothing our head and doing something else. So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about now. It's like becoming more psychologically smooth. Now we've did the physical ability. Now we want to make it smooth. Now, it's like when the first steam engines came out, they will crunch your arms, break your things. There was no safety equipment. There was no safety railings even. It was everything was open and clunking along, and there was like no safety at all, right? So now to make it human, right? To make it more human, you have to add these layers of psychological safety, not just physical safety. It's like psychological safety. So let's continue on. And these are just some ideas to think about when you're designing products. Instead of just like, can I get the program to run? It's like that's not it. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about how do we get people to want us to use our software, and if they are using it, or to feel pleasant, or to feel good about what we're doing, and not feel like they're being gypped or fooled or ripped off or.
It's fair to say. But they weren't really talking about the internet or connected devices to that extent. They were obsessed about flying cars. And what people tend to do is when they try and predict the future, they basically take the most visible form of progress they've seen in their own lifetime, or in the last 5 to 10 years, and they sort of extrapolate it.
Yeah.
May actually be violating the laws of physics. The thing is, it often comes to try and predict
I'm having some issues with my computer. Hold on.
Sure.
I had this all queued up, and it's like YouTube is rewinding, so I need to get this back here. So I apologize.
The next burst of economic growth comes from improvements in marketing efficiency.
Right, where it is.
It comes from somewhere you're not expecting at all.
Right, here it is.
What people tend to do is when they try and predict the future, they basically take the most visible form of progress they've seen in their own lifetime, or in the last 5 to 10 years, and they sort of extrapolate it. But what actually happens with progress is it comes from somewhere you're not expecting at all. So one of my questions is that, do we actually have a possibility that, oddly, the next burst of economic growth comes from improvements in marketing efficiency? And in particular,
and then when he says marketing, he doesn't use the standard way people are talking about the marketing, where you're just doing ads, or you have like different channels. You're going to be ever doing an ad for your radio, an ad for TV, an ad for websites, an ad for Instagram. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the whole thing around how someone hears about your product, what your company name is, how they access your stuff, how easy it is to navigate, to find out just what you are, how to feel trustworthy with your thing, how to deal with people ethically. Like when they sign up for a subscription, do you make it easy for them to unsign, or do you bury it underneath some kind of thing, or do you have a big old license agreement where they have to go through first, and then buried deep inside says we're going to steal your data from you? Is it that or do you just like don't even put that there, and just like, we're not stealing from you, we're not doing any of that crazy stuff, we're going to provide a service and that's it, right? It's that kind of stuff that we're engaged into now. So people would put up with that kind of abusive stuff because what else was there? There wasn't anything else. Now we're getting to the stage of like, okay, you have to be a little more ethical, a little bit more moral, a little bit more caring, giving a shit how your customers, because they're gonna go other, because you're gonna be the new place you can go that's not gonna be abusing them, right? It's like this is a new frontier that's not technological, it's psychological. They're gonna keep going.
In particular, the improvements in marketing efficiency and effectiveness come from advances that are currently being made academically in psychology, in the understanding of human behavior, in anthropology and behavioral economics. Now, what would actually happen, I only ask this hypothetically, if, for example, the general success rate of new product launches was just 10% higher and the failure rate was commensurably less? If people just understood people and how they decided and what they'd pay for and how they behaved and how to change their behavior, just 5 to 10% better than we do now in terms of predictive value, what would the economic effect be? I don't know exactly. I thought I was mad asking this question. I was recently reading a little Davos thing where Accenture have made the same point. They've argued that they think that better understanding of human behavior change can add sort of 2.6% to world GDP or something of that kind. So I'm not at least totally insane in asking the question. And the way I explain the point about, is economic value material or can it be psychological, is, I suppose, quoting Benjamin Franklin is always helpful to start with. As he quite rightly says, there are two ways of being happy, or two ways of looking at the world, for that matter. You can either diminish your wants or augment your means. There's the psychological solution to happiness or the materialistic economic version. The result is the same, and it's for each man to decide for himself and to do that which appears to be easier. So you can solve problems in two ways. You can actually basically create more stuff, or you can make people more content with stuff they already have. And they seem equally valid. Now, the most extreme point of view in this case is taken by an economics blogger called Noah Smith. He actually believes that the next big technology will become something called DMOD, which stands for desire modification. He thinks it might be drugs or chemicals.
This may be what the whole weed thing was for, is to reduce because the elite want us to reduce our consumption and giving people weed and reduce our competitiveness as well, so they don't have to worry about someone coming up and eating their lunch. So that's probably one of the reasons why weed was put out as a DMOD. Alcohol is definitely a DMOD.
Reduce people's urge to acquire new things and to forever seek more experiences and make people content with what already exists. Some cynics would say that these drugs already exist and that quite a few people are enjoying them already.
For sure.
You could argue that the first person to discover these drugs will then lose all appetite for marketing them or selling them. Then once he's taken the DMOD drug himself, he go, well, I've invented this fantastic thing. I have the opportunity now to create a world. Nah, why bother? I'll just watch television.
So that's kind of what it's for.
I mean, there might be slightly...
Or take over a country, or retake back your government, or reduce the level of taxation so you can actually save something. Nah.
Perilous results for the merchants. You could also take a more lateral answer to this and say that actually, there have already been desire modification technologies in existence over the last 3,000 to 4,000 years. Among them, for example, religion. So that's a lateral way of looking at. Quakerism is emphatically a kind of DMOD approach to life. But I've become famous. I've got to tell this story. Unfortunately, it's become a kind of albatross around my neck because.
All right, I'll let you go watch that story, but I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. This is up to this is fast forward the same video, except a little further ahead.
You can use technology. Now, to some extent, of course, that was Steve Jobs' genius. If you're an absolute hardcore technologist, they actually slightly technologies in existence.
Damn it.
They fake low latency.
Wait, here we go.
Of course, that was Steve Jobs' genius. If you're an absolute hardcore technologist, they actually slightly despise Apple because the products aren't necessarily on the leading edge. It's the way in which the product relates to the human.
Right, and the way in which the product relates to the human. That is the whole thing. People think it's all these, so I've been in tech for a long time, right? People think it's all these buttons and numbers. I love that stuff. Don't get me wrong, I love it. I love calculators. We don't even need them. I still love them. But people don't love them, right? People got other things to do. We get all enamored and fascinated with all the witchy stuff. And Steve Jobs is like, he's been living in this other world with actual people in it and not just technologists. And he has this other viewpoint that he can bring to bear, which is like, people don't want to dick with that shit, man. Yes, there's some people that there's this person here, right here. This person here is like, the 2%, 16% of this. He's in this region right here. It's like, this sucks. I need something more. But most people aren't, man. Most people aren't. Most people are right here. And we have to build our products for most people because that's who is going to buy it, right? Unless you're building something for these guys and this is a pointless exercise. If you're trying to do it for people, normal, regular old people who may access your product, and just for making it easier for people, you can always unlock more features, okay? But the general first stage has to be, please, human. It has to be human. It has to be like, okay, how are most people going to look at this thing? Can we design it for that person? Because if we design it for that person, we can always enhance it for the power users. But without them coming in the door saying, I need this now, it doesn't matter. It's like if you give them all the stuff, like that damn Jira stuff, like give you all the switches and buttons and switch and everything, all the selectors, all the different radio buttons, every checkboxes, everything. No. It's more like the GitHub style, when it's just when their project manages a series of tasks, and you can put extra stuff in the things if you want, but it's just a series of tasks, and you can say what stage it is. If it's completed, it'll give you a little Gantt chart if you want that. But like, it's super simple, and that's really what we need. Like, we don't need all this crazy Jira stuff. That's not necessary.
That is so powerful about that brand. And it is the overlap between technology and psychology.
Right.
If you want another example of where you could actually completely get it wrong if you ignore psychology, take, for example, mobile telephony, where billions are being spent all over the world upgrading to 4G and other faster things.
11 years.
What's impressive about 4G is download speed. And everybody thinks, well, if I treble the download speed, this will create massive happiness and joy amongst all consumers. There's a slight problem. The human perception of speed on any network or connection is not really a factor of the download speed, it's a factor of the latency, which is...
And that's in general. In general, latency is the issue. Whether it's not download speed or clicking on a button on a website, I want to know something's going on. Like, I'm not all these like payment processors. You click it and you don't know. Is there something happening? I don't know. I mean, the only indicator is a little indicator of up on the actual website that something's happening. And there's so much like, how long is it going to be? How about this should take less than 5 seconds? If this takes longer than 30 seconds, something has gone wrong. Nope, just click and what's happening? I don't know. Is my card being charged? Is things happening? I don't know. That kind of stuff. That has to stop. That has to stop, guys.
Is how quickly the device responds when you push a button. Now, one of the reasons we love using tablets is because
he talks about like the apps instead of the websites at this time, which is just, all this stuff is terrible still. So this stuff is all open for a competition, right? Because of these factors.
They fake low latency. Actually, the download speed and the actual latency may be quite slow, but when you touch a tablet app, something happens immediately. So your brain goes, this is pretty good.
Yeah, and that should always be the case. For UI designers, UX designers, managers, listen to this, you should always have some sort of response for the user. The levels of acceptable UI that we're still dealing with after knowing these fairly basic stuff, every single UI designer should know these things and not let them happen. We've known this for 30 years. Why is this still happening? Because these people don't see value in it. These people do not see value in it. When a time has come to cut tickets, right? What do we cut? What can we cut to make it schedule? Guess what gets cut? All this stuff, all this human stuff. That's the last like 95% of it. You know, the last 5% take half the time of the project, right? Because it's all this stuff. We should have done that. It's like, you should have known. What the hell?
I pressed the button and immediately something appeared on my screen. Now, behind the scenes, things may be groaning away, exactly like that strange insurance company sending out the check. But my brain has been duped. It's a bit like having a servant which goes, right away, sir, and then he disappears and goes down the pub for an hour before he actually does what you're supposed to do.
As well, as all people really want to know is this part initiated? Have you accepted my order? I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't care. I just want to know I can move on to the next thing. I don't just sit here and wait. For what? What's going on? I have no idea. You're making me wait? No, that's unacceptable. It's 2025, 2024. No, you give the user feedback. They don't really care how long it takes. They just want to know what the status of it is. Maybe an estimate would be nice. An estimate would be nice. If it takes make it really long. If it takes longer than 30 seconds, like if the thing's going to take 5 seconds, you put on the little thing that says, if this takes longer than 30 seconds, something's wrong. And a little button that says cancel, right? Or stop or whatever. And then they know. Oh, it's okay. It normally takes 5 seconds. Or this should take 2 minutes. And it takes 10 seconds, right? That level of stuff. So people are like, oh, it's super fast. Look at this. It only took 10 seconds. As opposed to hitting the button and nothing happens. Okay, where's the screen? 10, 15 seconds later. Oh, now the order accepted. Oh, great. Now I could have been doing something else. Instead of just staring at the screen waiting. That stuff is so annoying.
Okay? But nonetheless, in our brains, that works. And so you can have billions and billions of pounds spent on improving technology in a way that has no noticeable appreciation of the human enjoyment of something. That's increasing download speeds and mobile. You can play a trick on people with the tablet app, which gives them the impression of high speed, and they're not really bothered about the measure that you're seeking.
Well, it's not a trick. It's actually it's how we just operate through the world normally. All right, let's go on to the next video. And I am going to restart this thing at 24:45. Let's see if it's still here.
Pixels did it have? But if you notice the Austrian School, and this is where it comes from, but were disastrous in every other respect. So consumers have to be irrational for game theoretic reasons in order to get the best value possible out of manufacturers. Does that make sense? More of this later. Just to make a point that not all economists are the same and they're not all guilty. The Austrian School, and this is where it comes to my idea that you can actually create value through better psychology just as much as you can through better psychology. Ludwig von Mises, who was one of the sort of eminence grise of the Austrian School, they were kicking around Vienna at the time of Sigmund Freud. They include, as well as von Mises, Hayek, for example, Schumpeter, and a few.
Before I saw this video, I didn't know that von Mises was in with those German intellectuals and talking to Freud at the time, and they're all bantering around these ideas about value and how people perceive things and emotions and what are the parts of the psyche and all this other stuff, which, you know, is specious to begin with, but it's just ideas to think about, right? If you have to have something to anchor on to talk about these things, but they aren't actual things. That's where people get really confused. Like, they aren't actual physical things they're talking about. These are just conceptual ideas to balance it out. Everything. Humans really want to make things concrete. It's like, oh, you mean it's an actual thing? It's a part of your brain. You can do surgery and cut it out? No.
Current American people who call themselves Austrian. He makes the point that since value is subjective, the value created by marketing is no different from the value created by manufacturing. And the way he described that is
the value created by marketing is the same value as created by manufacturing. Meaning how someone finds out and accesses the conceptual model of your product or services is equal to the actual product or service itself. That's pretty exciting, actually. I think it's very exciting because that leaves a lot of opening that to have your customers come to you and like understand your product and know what you're going to do for them before you even engage with them.
There's no sensible distinction to be made between the value created in a restaurant by the person who makes the food and the person who sweeps the floor.
Right. Yeah.
But one of them produces the food, the other one creates the environment in which the food is enjoyed and appreciated. To make a distinction between those two forms of value is completely erroneous. And von Mises absolutely chastises economists for attacking marketing and advertising.
Yeah, for sure. Because especially now in this particular society, technologically advanced society, how someone finds out and gets to know and understand your product or service and the problem that you're solving for them, you know, through the advertising and marketing is also just the design of your business, the whole user experience. What you will do for them, how you will do it, how you'll know it's good. You're standing behind it, or you're not. You're like, oh, this is a one-off deal, and if you don't like it, screw you. You know, that's nice to know up front, right? I'd like to know up front how you feel about that, or make it just part of the whole thing. Being moral and ethical with your customers is a new frontier.
This reason. By the way, if you want to make wine better, do you know the best trick? Just tell people you give it to that it's really expensive. This is proven not just by their reported enjoyment of the wine. If you actually attach electrodes to their head, they will enjoy wine better if they believe it to be expensive. They will also find analgesics much more effective if they're either expensive or indeed branded.
Okay, so that's interesting, right? So people want to, when they take a medicine, they're innately, they want to know that was costly for someone to figure out because they feel like a problem that they have is costly. And the brand has to be like, I have to just know this is going to work for me. I don't want some off-brand thing. I don't know. No, I've never heard of it before. I don't know anything about it. I trust it because I have a pain right now that I want to get rid of. And this thing is saying it's going to do it. And I'm going to trust it. And this builds the trust between you and the customer and this whole thing. And this is, as you know, rare.
Branded analgesics are actually better at reducing pain than unbranded ones. This isn't just reported pain relief, actual pain relief. The placebo effect, but who cares? I think placebos are brilliant.
Me too. I think placebo is awesome.
They're cheap. They have very few side effects. What's the problem? More of them, please. A few other things about Austrian economics. It believed that economics should be subordinate to psychology. It believed there was a discipline called praxeology, which is the study of human decision-making and behavior, how humans act and decide. Again, value is subjective. They also were obsessed with looking at individual human action. They weren't in favour of attributing, for example, intention to capital or labour. They merely said a person in such a situation. They were the direct marketers of the economic world in many respects. Now, you've all heard of this man, I expect. The interesting thing I didn't know about Drucker, I always assumed he was German. He was actually Austrian. Not only that, but he hung out with Austrian economists all the time. His father had taught Joseph Schumpeter, and he was actually best friends with Schumpeter and saw him about a week before he died. Now you start to understand what Drucker's saying here. I never had the courage to report that. There are only two things which make money in business, innovation and marketing. Everything else is a cost. But that's what...
So innovation and marketing. So he means like a new technical way to do it, a cheaper, faster, smaller, whatever. There's some new technical thing. and then marketing, right? Telling people about it. How do people know about it? How do people attack? How do people hear about what you do? And then how they the first things they see, the things you're choosing to put up front, the big window, and then as they go, oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, that looks good, and then go deeper. And this can take seconds, right? In modern technology, this can take literally milliseconds. A lot of times, people will just scan the page quickly, and if you are doing it for them, with not for you in mind, but for them in mind, you can rapidly go up the ladder, if you will, to like getting them to be, oh, I'm ready to buy your product, right?
Now think about it. There are two ways you can fundamentally create value in a business. You can either find out what people want and ingeniously work out a way to make it, or you can find out something you can make and ingeniously find out a way to make people want it.
Right. And that's when I talk about the Microm Monopoly. That's what I'm talking about. This, finding what you can make, and then again, find out how to get people to want it, right? Because with KMP, I'm always talking about the KMP stuff. It's allowed one developer to do iOS, Android, web, desktop, and the back end with one language, one set of libraries, one IDE. that makes the stack now available. If we're doing full stack, and it's actually one language, right? One set of tooling, one company. That's so different than what we've had to deal with, even just up until like the last year or so. So a lot of people don't even know this exists. iOS with the UI kit, which has also been the thing. Oh, to make a new UI for every single. No, that's bad. No, we're not doing that. So we have one UI toolkit. It's called Compose, right? For the desktop, for the Android, for all of it. It's like what they tried to do with Flutter, but that was only for 2 platforms. This is for all of them, right? And anything else that comes up in the future. Watches, goggles, whatever.
But to some extent, innovation and marketing are exactly the same thing.
Yeah. So the Microm Monopoly, you can go back and look at some of my things about the Microm Monopoly. When you're creating something new in this new technological age that we're in, the software age, you're already thinking about the marketing message. You're going to create the service at the same time as you're creating the marketing. They're blended together. You're not going to market something that people don't want. You're going to find out what they want, and then you find out how they want it. And it's going to be a process, right, to learn that stuff. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes it's a lot of times the customers, if you're listening well, will tell you how they want it. And the simpler, the better. The easier, the faster, cheaper. I mean, faster and cheaper are the ones you can measure. And what Roy has actually got me to change my mind a little bit is like, and I kind of already knew about the cheaper stuff. You can actually make more money by going more expensive. You may actually make more money by going slower somehow. Maybe people want to talk to someone on the phone before they make a big purchase. Before they spend $2,000 or something, whatever. They want to talk to a human being that speaks their language. And we will charge you more for that. Oh yeah. You want to talk to somebody who speaks English? Oh yeah, you're going to pay money for that. But guess what? There's people I would rather just talk to someone who speaks the language I speak. And I'll pay more for it because I don't want to dick with it.
They're the same thing, or flip sides of the same coin, or the same thing just happening to take place in a slightly different order.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting question to be asked at this point. Once you understand that marketing is innovation, they're fundamentally the same thing, and that you can just as easily innovate by getting people to do something they weren't prepared to do before.
And this is really something that technology people have a real hard time with. It's like, no, it's technology. It's the technologies. Well, for you, it's the technology. For me, KMP is like, oh yeah. But for the customer, he doesn't give a shit about KMP. He don't give a fuck. He just wants his cell phone. He's got some problem he wants to deal with. His burner. He's got a dead animal. Like my favorite example. He's got a dead animal in his backyard. He wants a dead animal removal. First hit. Boom. Now I want to go to the dead. I go to the site. It says, we remove dead animals and bury them nicely. Call us and we'll take care of it tomorrow. Right? That's what people want to hear, right? Oh, you can track the whole thing, and so it's like, oh, sorry, we can't come out today. We'll come out tomorrow. Blah, all that stuff in English or in his language. This stuff doesn't exist. People aren't doing this yet, but they're gonna because they can take the money that instead of having that big fat staff of 50 developers, they do it with 5 developers, and we have customer service people who we pay money extra to speak English to English speaking people that want to, or whatever language they want to be in. And we're like, thank you. Hello, how can I help you? And then over delivering somehow.
Or to think of something in a different way to the way they thought of it before, as you can by producing something that was difficult to make before. You have to ask a secondary question, which is how many technological problems are really marketing problems in disguise?
Right. Exactly. This is a tough one to wrap your head around, because you're taking the technological solution, which I love it, man. I would wish everything was a technological solution, but a lot of times it's not. It's how you approach things. It's taste. It's art. It's perspective. It's ethics. It's morals. It's history. It's context. It's philosophy. It's humor. It's all this other stuff. So this is the new technical revolution is going to be this philosophical, psychological stuff to care back to the consumer, right? To the person that's consuming your product. Like, give a shit about them again. That's super rare, by the way.
Also, how many technological successes are really marketing successes where the engineers are taking the credit?
For sure.
Let's take something like the car, which we all obviously think is, well, there was no marketing involved in creating the popularity of the car. People had to go by horse and then they wanted to go by car, so obviously they went by car. And when we look back on it, we tell a very rational story about why people switched to using cars. But there was a 10 to 15 year period where the level of expense and unreliability and general nuisance in automotive transport made it worse than a horse.
Yeah, that's when I got involved with computers. It was back in the day, but it was just a pain in the dick to mess with these computers at all. It was like, why are you doing that? I don't know. I just thought it was cool. I'm just saying, there's other people who thought it was cool too, but it wasn't like I was like, obviously, oh yeah, I'll have one of those at home. I'll be carrying one of those in my pocket in the next 10 years. No, yeah. Oh, they're like, you're a nerd. Get out of here with that. We don't want to hear about your go-to loops.
The reason the first 10 to 15 years of innovation in the car market existed was because people were convinced that cars were cool.
Yeah.
It wasn't practical utility.
Correct.
There are large numbers of things. We assume that no sane person would get a large flat-screen TV before they had indoor plumbing. Actually, men might disagree with that. Actually, men might say that's a perfectly sensible priority. Big telly first, we'll worry about the indoor lavatory in 2015. In China, this is quite common behaviour. We assume that everybody got plumbing in indoor lavatories and flushable lavatories because of absolutely practical, logical reasons. Yeah. I think most of it was driven by status, to be honest, in the early days.
Yeah, for sure. Like plumbing when it first came in to Vogue. Our first move to San Francisco, I did a tour of all like the houses and stuff, and it still had some of the older houses, Victorians, had the plumbing on the outside. I was like, what the fuck did you put plumbing on? Well, it was a status symbol at the time. Indoor plumbing was a big deal. It was fancy. It means you were super rich, and the people wanted to show off, so they put the plumbing on the outside.
Yes. Then it becomes a social norm. It becomes embarrassing not to have a lavatory. But we always assume all these things are just technological successes in which marketing had no part. I'm not sure that isn't rewriting history to make people look more serious and sensible than they really are. And to make engineers look like the heroes, not marketers.
Correct.
But equally, other interesting problems. There are a few people who believe that this thing, the electronic cigarette, can save sort of...
I'll let you listen about it as an electronic cigarette. So yes, so that's Rory, and he's got some really good insights for software developers, because these are the kinds of things that are gonna differentiate your products and your services that a lot of these companies just are not going to be able to deal with it. They don't think about this way. They want to reduce the cost, they want to reduce the price, and they want to somehow do it faster to get it the sprint. And they're not thinking about how can we make this more pleasant for the user? How can we make this person laugh? How can we make spark joy? Do something unusual that we spend instead of spend the money. We spend money on it, right? We spend money on making them spark joy, like. Somehow, some way, like just thinking about that stuff that way, right? Just having that insight that is just the same as doing some sort of massive back end revamp. Change out the language and put more servers on. Like maybe make the button do a silly little dance when they click purchase. Maybe that'd be better. I'm Chris at that. You can give me a like and subscribe. I'll talk to you soon.